Dr. Jacobo Grinberg was a respected neurophysiologist with a PhD and his own university lab, but his academic career ended the moment he set out to mathematically prove that our reality is a simulation. Before he could publish his final findings, he vanished. 20 years before his disappearance, in 1975, Grinberg received an invitation to the headquarters of the Mexican president. The president's sister arranged for the ambitious scientist to meet a mysterious woman known as Dona Pasita. On paper, Pasita was a lottery ticket seller. In practice, she was a shaman who seemingly cured the blind and pulled people back from the brink of death. Grinberg watched closely as she appeared to materialize organs and living tissue right out of thin air, performing surgeries without a single medical tool. A traditional scientist would have immediately written this off as a magic trick. Grinberg took a massive risk. Instead of using his credentials to debunk what he saw, he returned to his lab and decided to apply the rigorous scientific method to prove that the supernatural was entirely real. After years of study, he formulated the Syntergic theory. This hypothesis proposed the universe is an informational matrix, raw source code generating an interactive hologram. Standard human consciousness acts as a passive code reader, but shamans like Pasita had trained their minds to become code writers. By entering highly altered states of consciousness, these individuals could access reality at its deepest level. What witnesses described as a miracle was actually just the direct manipulation of the universe's base organic structures. He built a bridge between ancient mysticism and quantum physics. But a hypothesis, no matter how logically sound, is useless without empirical data. Grinberg needed a controlled experiment to prove it. Grinberg knew his peers would never accept a theoretical explanation. To prove that all human minds are connected through this universal background field, he had to produce physical, measurable evidence. He designed an experiment involving two participants who first meditated together to establish a connection. Then they were sealed inside isolated rooms. One person sat in total silence, while the other was suddenly bombarded with intense flashes of light and loud sounds. This chart tracks the brainwave data of the two individuals during one of the trials. As the timeline progresses, both data lines spike at the exact same moment. The brain in the silent room was reacting to the flashes of light happening to the other person down the hall. In nearly 25% of cases, this exact synchronization occurred. For Grinberg, these charts were the physical proof he was looking for. The data indicated that their minds were briefly telepathically entangled through the matrix. His academic colleagues had absolutely no patience for this. Mainstream science rejected the findings almost instantly, arguing the experiment was far too easy to fake and pushing Grinberg to the fringes of the scientific community. While universities were busy mocking him, a completely different institution was quietly studying his data. The CIA actively incorporated Grinberg's research into their classified Stargate project, exploring the use of telepathy and remote viewing for national security. Grinberg anticipated the academic backlash. He decided to shut down the skepticism by scaling up his test. He planned a massive, unfakeable version of his telepathy experiment, utilizing meditators separated by thousands of miles across two distinct continents. The target location for this final test was Kathmandu, Nepal. But he never boarded the flight. On December 8, 1994, Jacobo Grinberg disappeared without a trace. The very thing designed to validate his life's work, the final, irrefutable step in his scientific method, was violently aborted by his sudden absence. A highly decorated Mexican police officer named Clemente Padilla took the case. He immediately checked passport control and found a crucial piece of evidence. There was no record of the scientist ever leaving Mexico. The investigation surfaced a wide array of grounded suspects. There was the CIA, potentially silencing him to protect their psychic research. There was the Mexican government, cautious of his political ties. And then there was his wife, Teresa, who acted suspiciously after his disappearance and vanished herself exactly 1 year later. An entirely different theory took root among his followers. They pointed out that Dona Pasita often vanished to evade authorities and suggested that Grinberg didn't die at all. Instead, he used his own research to step outside the matrix of reality. Because Padilla was abruptly pulled off the case by the government, and because no physical evidence was ever recovered, an enormous informational vacuum formed. Without a body or a crime scene, Grinberg's radical theories became the dominant explanation for his fate. Yet the foundation of Grinberg's entire worldview requires heavy skepticism. Take the case of jazz legend Charles Mingus. Diagnosed with ALS, a desperate Mingus visited Dona Pasita and received one of her famous spiritual surgeries. Mingus left the procedure swearing he had been cured, but when his wife later peeled back his bandages while he slept, she found no blood and no incision. The miracles that triggered Grinberg's rigorous quest were highly likely to be elaborate illusions, and in the decades since he disappeared, other researchers have attempted to replicate the results of Grinberg's simultaneous EEG experiments. Every single modern trial has failed to find evidence of telepathic entanglement. If Grinberg had stayed and run his final test in Nepal, he likely would have faced cold, hard failure. By vanishing before his hypothesis could be proven or dismantled, he bypassed the scientific method entirely. Today, his ideas survive not as peer-reviewed facts, but as a modern legend that is impossible to debunk.